And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather conditions Thursday morning, not too bad here over the interior. Some marginal VFR up along the Arctic coast there, as well as down here along the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound. Some of that working up along western Cook Inlet. IFR Kodiak Island, another batch here near the Pribilofs, but southwest of Nunivak Island. Marginal VFR up across St. Lawrence Island. Next front pushing some IFR eastward here into Adak and then eventually Atka late tonight. Southeast coast, right on up into the Yakutat area, Copper River Basin, VFR. And that holds right through Thursday afternoon. No change out in these areas. Stays VFR in the interior. Some marginal VFR a little farther south across the eastern north slope to the Brooks Range and eastern Arctic coast. VFR western coast here right on down until you get to St. Lawrence Island. Back to marginal there with the IFR here over the northern Bering Sea down across Nunivak Island to about the Pribilofs and then off to the southwest with marginal VFR for the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island. And marginal VFR getting a little more extensive here, especially over the Kenai Peninsula and western Cook Inlet, northward there to the western Alaska Range, and also here over Prince William Sound. And then for Friday morning, no change for the southeast coast here. The only change might be some marginal VFR sliding into Dixon entrance there, maybe catching Heidelberg possibly, otherwise VFR right up into Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula. Holding on to that marginal VFR, now covering southern Cook Inlet, right on up along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. From the north slope out to the Arctic coast, marginal VFR. Good VFR Friday morning in the interior. And IFR in a band associated with some storminess out there from the Pribilofs down across the eastern Aleutians to the Alaska Peninsula, followed by a lot of marginal VFR. And then for the afternoon, still some marginal VFR up through the Bering Strait and covering the north slope and Arctic coast. IFR right on into Togiak Bay there in the southwest mountains. And also here now IFR over western Cook Inlet down to Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, Fognak Island there, and more IFR along the Alaska Peninsula, marginal VFR for the Aleutians, and still pretty good in the interior, and VFR for the southeast coast all the way again, as I mentioned, into Prince William Sound, the Copper River Basin, passes, and into Tufikanagan, both VFR for the day tomorrow. Thursday, Lake Clark and Merrill, occasionally marginal VFR, mostly marginal on the eastern entrances. Rainy, mostly marginal for the eastern entrance as well. Windy, VFR. Isabel, VFR. Mentasta, VFR. And Tanita, VFR, trending toward marginal VFR as the clouds kind of thicken and lower into the afternoon. And for Portage, marginal VFR. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 feet here, Yukon Delta, Norton Sound area, right up to about Nome, over to Golovin in those areas. And 2,000 to 4,000 feet here from Yakutat and 4,000 to 5,000 across the southeast coast. And then southerly winds ahead of that next system, warm air building ahead of that front out there, 2 to as high as 6,000 feet over the western Aleutians. Icing with that system. Quite an area of isolated moderate rime icing spreading in toward Nikolsky by tomorrow afternoon, covering the area out to the west of the Komodorsky Islands. Another area here with southeast flow could be considerable moderate rime icing, Kamishak Bay, across southern Kenai Peninsula, maybe up across Resurrection Bay there. And from there, going to the jet stream, southwesterly 60 knots over the eastern part of the state, southerly 65 here for the Gulf of Alaska. And the stronger winds here coming across the central and eastern Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula, 110 to 130 knots. And for the 9,000 foot wind flow, strongest winds here across the Gulf of Alaska, about 55 knots there, diminishing as they reach the coastline, turning south and then southwesterly, not all that strong there. And then the strongest winds here south of the Aleutians, westerlies up to 65 knots. And for the 3,000 foot wind flow, low pressure out there, that next system coming in, 40 knots southwest winds coming into the western Aleutians. and lighter winds here over the eastern Bering Sea. Easterlies 45 knots here coming from the Gulf right across the Barren Islands into Kamishak Bay and northeast Bristol Bay. 35 knots there just off the North Gulf Coast, and the stronger winds right along the southeast coast here, pretty light and variable over the inside waters, as well as interior Alaska from the Arctic coast southward into the Copper River Basin, Susitna Valley. Turbulence with the stronger winds, moderate turbulence there for western Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula across the Barren Islands, in across Iliamna Lake.